friends. Welcome to the Creative Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Caldwell, and I'm so happy you're here. Each episode, I take some time to chat with fellow artists about life, faith, and the impact of the arts. Hi, friends. So good to be back with you for episode 64 of the podcast. It's hard to believe that tomorrow is June 1st and that we're officially entering into the summer season. Wanted to give you guys a little bit of a life update. I recently finished my last day teaching at the high school that I work at, not just for the summer, but actually stepping away just for a change of season. And it's definitely been a bittersweet time, and it's been super busy and full, kind of all of the end of the year events, just really processing through this shift of season. And I think the biggest thing that I've felt in the last few weeks is just a sense of gratitude for this past season that I've been able to have teaching and directing and getting to pour into the lives of my students and coworkers, and also so grateful for the ways that they've impacted my life. I'm also excited for kind of a shift of season and getting to focus in a little bit more on this podcast, spending time with family, and just some other ventures that I'm excited to explore. So it's a big season of change, but I'm really grateful and excited to see what the Lord has in this new season. I really want to jump right into today's conversation because I'm so excited for you to get to meet my friend Tammy Tolås. She is a friend of mine back from my ADM 2 days, and she currently serves at the University of the Nations College of the Arts for YWAM, or Youth with a Mission. She also leads a dance ministry out of the YWAM Kona campus. She owns and operates her own business for dance and Pilates, and is producing the Project Dance anniversary event in Hawaii this summer. I love how Tammy describes her journey as a life of wild obedience. We dive into what that looks like and the difference between a good plan and obedience. I was so encouraged by her perspective on topics like what impact really means, why comparison has no place for us as artists, and being confident knowing that we are loved by God regardless of our, quote, qualifications. We also spend some time chatting about the super exciting event that's happening this summer, which is, like I mentioned, the Project Dance 20th anniversary celebration. Project Dance was founded by Cheryl Cutlip, who was guest on episode 12 of the podcast. And I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to hear more about how Project Dance got started. Super cool seeing the faithfulness of God. And this summer in Kona, Hawaii, from July 8th through 10th, there's going to be an incredible Project Dance event happening. And Tammy is helping to really lead that effort. And then from July 12th through 15th, they're putting on a dance leaders retreat, an intensive called Refuel. If you happen to be a dancer or a leader in the dance ministry space, this is for you. And I seriously encourage you to check it out and see if that's something that might be a good fit for you this summer. So excited that you're joining us today. Enjoy my conversation with Tammy Tolås. Well, officially, welcome to the podcast. So excited to have you.
Yeah, so excited to be here. This is great.
Yay! So for those that are listening, I'm here with Tammy Tolås. And am I saying that correctly?
Tolås. Yeah. I always, in Norwegian, you would say Tolås. And then I just tell people in our American English, it's Tolås.
Tolås. Okay, cool. Tammy Tolås. There we go. Yeah. And it's so fun thinking back. We met in ADM 2. Back in the day, not that it was that long ago, but it feels like a long time ago. Right.
It does. It's wild how it's such a time warp. In some ways it's it was yesterday, but it was also a billion years ago.
Yes, exactly. And so I'd love for you to just share a little bit about yourself for our listeners and kind of what you're up to currently. And then we'll sort of dive into some different topics. So be fun.
Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in performing arts ministry. My family joined a performing arts ministry in 1989. I was 3 years old at the time.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I grew up with that. And then at the ripe age of 15, I was I'm done with ministry. I've done it all my life. And I accidentally joined another company, which that director had been connected with YWAM. And I kind of always known I was going to join YWAM. And so here I am years later, 2022, I'm with YWAM Kona, University of the Nations, Kona, Hawaii.
Yes.
And I work with dance with the university. I work with the College of Arts with the university. And I also have a studio for dance and a Pilates studio. And I'm also mom of 2.
Yes.
And wife. So life is very full, and I'm getting ready to produce Project Dance anniversary event here in Hawaii. So it's the 20th anniversary event, and we're doing it big because, of course, since it's the anniversary event, we can't just do a 3-day event. We also are going to throw in a leaders retreat, which is going to be epic.
Ooh, that sounds so good.
Yes.
Whoa. And what leader doesn't want to go to Hawaii for a retreat?
Come
just saying.
on. Yes, yes. And we are keeping costs as minimal as possible too. So it's like, I don't know if anyone's ever going to get the opportunity to come to Hawaii as cheaply as we are setting things up, like as we are making this available.
That is so cool. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Okay. I need to look into this as well.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
I'm like, guys, I'm trying to do everything short of buy your ticket for you.
Yes. Makes me so happy. But yeah, we'll definitely maybe get a little bit more into that as we go. But I loved kind of just so for everyone that's listening, the background is I have people answer some questions beforehand. And I loved one thing you said, Tammy, that you kind of described your journey as like wild obedience. And I was like, that's such a good description. And I'm curious for you to describe a little bit more what that's looked like for you. Living wild obedience. Yeah.
Wild obedience. Yeah. I mean, I've realized over the years, and I think a lot of this comes from just growing up in ministry and, from a very young age, learning about like, oh, we can actually pray and talk to the Lord, but he actually talks back and we can listen and hear his voice. And he actually leads us into what he has for us and calls us into. And also he'll provide for it.
Yeah.
And so I think learning those lessons over my life through ministry and seeing those things come to fruition, it has just created this like, God is faithful no matter what kind of tenacity within my heart.
That's so good.
To the point where when he's like, okay, now it's time to pack your suitcase and move around the world. It's like, all right, time to pack our suitcase and move around the world. And I mean, not that it's always like that easy. Of course, there's well, am I really hearing you, God? Like, can you give me the confirmation? Like, what's that going to look like? But it has created this tenacity in me. So, I mean, I had just turned 18 years old and I left home to come to Hawaii to join YWAM and do my DTS.
Yeah.
And I remember getting on the airplane, fresh 18-year-old traveling across the nation, over the ocean, going, what am I doing? I'm all alone. Like, I don't know anybody over there. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, I could imagine that would potentially be very scary for most people,
Yeah.
But also exciting. There's that like new adventure feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were your emotions in the moment, I guess?
Oh, so many emotions. And this is actually a hilarious little bonus material of the story. Around that time, the movie Elf had been released. And I had flown out from my hometown like 3 days after Christmas that year. So the movie Elf was playing in the airplane. And Elf is a really hilarious movie. It's really quirky, right?
Right.
So I'm watching this movie for the first time. And what's hilarious is I'm laughing at moments because the movie is so funny. And then I have these moments where I'm like thinking about like leaving all my friends, leaving all my family.
Oh, yeah.
And I would be like almost like tearing up and crying. And then something funny would happen in the movie and I would be laughing. I was like, yeah, all over the place. There was lots of different, that was such a quirky thing. But no, there was so many emotions because I think a very deep part of me knew that I was stepping into a calling. Like I was stepping into something God had been setting me up for since I was 3 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
And I just had this sense that I wasn't going back home. Like, and yes, I would go back home to visit. Yes. But I had this sense of like, this is it. Like, this is the next part of my life beginning.
Right.
And so I think there was a lot of like letting go of things and releasing like all the friendships that I had and security of having a home and a family and a car and a whatever.
Right.
And just going, all right, I'm joining full-time missions where now I'm going to fundraise and do this as a volunteer missionary. And I'm going to sell my car and I'm going to give up my friends and just, okay, God, here we go. Like, just kind of like jumping off a cliff.
Exactly. And I think it's like so countercultural in a lot of ways with, you know, all the things that we're kind of getting from society and the world and whatever is like, you know, get security. You want to have like all these things, X, Y, and Z planned and in a row and like all of that. And so I think it takes that step of faith and the courage knowing like you've been called to this. And I think that's super cool though. So cool to like listen to God's voice and just follow.
Yeah. And I feel like over time, it's just escalated too. Like that was just like the drop in the bucket because then like my husband and I, we got married in 2009 and then we bounced all over the place from there. We got married and we were like, all right, we're going to be in YWAM for life. And we have, you know, mostly been in YWAM, but we especially thought we were just going to be based out of YWAM Kona and we weren't going to go anywhere. And my husband's visa got denied.
Oh no.
That sent us on this whole journey of like, God, I thought we had our next step. Like we were secure in what we were going to do, but obviously we didn't double check with you. Like, oh, wait, God, like we were like, God, wait. We have really good plans here for you.
Right.
Like, why are you canceling them?
I feel that very deep. I feel like that happens a lot where we're like, but really, I thought this was a great plan, God, you know?
Exactly. And it's like, this was a good plan for the Lord, but it wasn't necessarily obedience, right?
Yeah.
It was like, if we would have checked in with him, he was like, actually, I have this plan for you. And it's like, oh. And so that sent us on a crazy journey where his visa was denied. We ended up living in Norway for a little while, getting his visa. But because of that moment, we were like, okay, God, what do you want us to do? And we got this clear word from the Lord to go sharpen your tools. And so we could bring that back into missions and ministry with YWAM. So I literally was like, okay, God, anywhere, just tell us where, we'll go. And I was like looking at other university programs because I had already got my performing arts degree at this time. But I was like, okay, additional programs, additional degree programs, like, or certificate programs, or like, I was like, where in the world? I was looking everywhere in the world because in my mindset, I was like, nope, no nation is off limits. So wherever God will send us, like the doors will open. And what the crazy thing is that actually the very next step was New York City.
Oh, cool.
And the really funny thing was I emailed, it was Broadway Dance Center. I emailed Broadway Dance Center. And at the time they had a visa program, but not like a program for US citizens.
Interesting.
And so that was not on their website at all. And so I emailed them and they emailed me back. And this was what's so wild. Basically, my email was, hey, my husband's international. He could probably attend your visa program. How do you guys feel about me kind of tagging along with him and attending the same program, even though I'm an American?
Yeah.
And they were like, actually, we just came out of a meeting and we are starting that program for Americans. And so just go ahead and turn in.
That's so cool.
Go ahead and turn in your resume, your headshots, your dance photos, and like basically go ahead and apply. Like you'll be the first one to apply because it's not even on our website.
Sweet. That's so cool.
I literally had this moment where I was like, God, hello, thank you. Did you just do that? Like you just literally opened the door. And I think that was one of those moments for me that I was like, wow, like God will literally open the door and be like, go. Like,
wow.
Like he'll literally like start programs for you. He'll literally like, he knows what you need. He knows what tools you need, that he'll literally set you up. And then in New York City is where I met Cheryl Cutlip.
Yeah.
Started talking about Project Dance. That was the first place I attended Project Dance.
Wow, cool.
And then I also met Randall Flynn there. And I had, of course, heard about Randall Flynn for forever because I had heard about him because he had come to teach in YWAM many times.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was very interconnected with YWAM.
Yeah. And so I had heard about him. And so when I met him actually at Project Dance New York City, my husband and I took his dance class, and he basically took that as our audition.
Cool.
He didn't know that was our audition. So he basically kind of took that as our audition. He prayed for us. Okay, first of all, he prayed for us after the dance class, and both of us, my husband and I, were in tears because his prayer was just right on.
Yeah.
And he said to us, if you ever want to come to Houston, let me know. Like, so that's why I say we kind of accidentally auditioned for him.
I love that.
And at that time we were like, that's really funny, Randall. Like, if we ever come to Houston, because we're going to go back to YWAM Kona, that's our good plan for the Lord. Like, we still didn't learn yet. We were still like, this is our good plan from the Lord,
Yes.
And I actually was holding so tightly to my good plan for the Lord that I said, okay, God, I need to surrender my good plan for you.
Yeah.
And I know I'm so gripping onto it so much that I think you have to speak to either myself or my husband in a dream to confirm if we should go to Houston and spend time with Randall.
Yeah.
And then, no joke, I did not tell my husband this prayer. 2 days later, Andreas goes, oh, hey, I had this dream and we were in Houston with Randall and a damn dance company training with them. And I was like, what?
That's amazing.
And so at that point, I told him the dream. So these are like the stories of just like wild obedience. Like, okay, God, you speak, we'll go. You'll open the doors. And so even when we actually, from New York City, we had a very clear word of the Lord to go back to YWAM Kona for a short season. And then we moved to Houston, Texas, and literally doors just opened, like provision. Like, we didn't have a car, and we showed up and someone was like, hey, I'm looking for someone to borrow my car for a while because I have to leave. And we were like, what?
Like, when does that happen? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And there was just so many things. So it's like, man, when God tells you to do something, he'll show up for it. So just like wildly obey wherever, whenever, just go.
Yes. That is so amazing. And just so faith building, I think, to hear stories like that and to just trust like God is going before us and he will make a way,
Yeah.
So cool. And so I'm curious, like thinking back to your younger years and when you were first like in ministry as a kid, basically probably through what you can remember. Cause I don't even remember when I was 3, honestly, like
I know
maybe a few memories, but it's basically like 5 and older that I can recall. But, are there any things that stand out in your time, with King's Kids or any of your sort of training through the years that things that like prepared you for what you're doing now or the journey that God had for you after that?
Yeah. I mean, so the incredible thing about the King's Kids ministry that I was part of, it all started because this guy from our community left, did his DTS, saw King's Kids in action, which is like a kids performing arts ministry that started out of YWAM and actually started out of YWAM Kona.
Oh, cool.
And so he came back to where I grew up in Virginia with his family. And he said, so he didn't do his DTS in Kona, but he did his DTS somewhere and saw King's Kids. And he came back and said, I think we can do something like this here. And he took that King's Kids model and he and his family started it. In the first year, there was like between 20 and 30 kids.
Oh, wow.
Part of the team right away. Yeah. So what we would do is like, we would literally like create dances and perform them around the community, like any open door that we could get in, we would perform. So like community parades, like parking lots, and even like churches or schools or whatever, wherever we could go. And so I started that journey with my family when I was 3 years old, just performing everywhere. And the cool thing would be kind of like the model too was when we would do performances, oftentimes when the kids would introduce a dance by sharing a testimony. Then you would
Yeah.
dance. And then at the very end of the show or the performances, you would go out and pray for people who wanted prayer.
Oh,
And
cool.
so it was this really empowering thing as a kid to know that, like, don't let anyone look down on your youthfulness, but to set an example, like the Bible talks about, you know? And so it really was this confidence building thing that the Lord could really speak and use, you know, a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
Some really cool opportunities that came out of that was in 1996, there was a huge gathering for King's Kids where I think it was something like over 5,000 youth joined together for this gathering.
That would be really powerful.
Yeah, in Atlanta, Georgia. And we got to see different nations represented and hear what God was doing in different nations. And that was about a week long kind of event, workshop kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then from there, all the different teams that attended would like spread out all over North America and did an outreach and did ministry. Cool. And so that was my first outreach experience. My team went in North America to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for our outreach. And so that was like my first, like, you know, big outreach.
Wow. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then the crazy thing about this was, so we started like kind of networking because of this kids ministry. And when I was 15 years old, though, I was like, I'm done with ministry. Yeah. I've done this all my life. I'm finished. Like, yeah. I know everything. Like, you know, like a typical 15-year-old. No.
Yeah, pretty much. No. I love them all, but I do teach that age range. So and I've been there.
But it's good, right? Because like at that time in your life, you're trying to figure out your own identity, you know, yes. Apart from everything else, like, who am I? Yeah. You know? And so part of my journey was like, who am I? Well, I've done ministry all my life, so I'm done with that. I'm going to find out who I am apart from it, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, just that you would go through that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And so at the time I was like, well, I'm going to do hip hop and break dance. That's what I want to do. I want to train in hip hop and break dance. And so I'm going to go find that. So I had even created this like hip hop routine that won in a talent show for something. And I got to perform it somewhere. And it was just this cool hip hop routine. And I took that and signed up to this dance workshop. My mom actually signed me up for this dance workshop. This is like a hilarious part of my story, but it was like a defining moment for me. So my mom signed me up for this dance workshop at this ballet studio. And I was like, I don't want to go there, ballet. Like, I'll never do that. Like, pink tights and leotard. Like, there's no way.
Exactly.
And so I showed up to that workshop in like bulky tennis shoes, baggy pants, baggy shirt. Like, I'm here because I want to do hip hop, you know? And I heard that they had like a hip hop class at this workshop, this special intensive workshop that they were hosting. And so I ended up meeting the hip hop teacher, who actually turned out to be, it was actually more of like a street jazz that she was doing.
Okay. Yeah.
But like I meet her and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in your class. Well, her class actually filled up. I wasn't able to be in her class. Oh, no. I actually got placed in a ballet class. And I was like, how in the world did I get placed in a ballet class? And so they quickly at this intensive realized that I should not be placed in a ballet class. And they switched me over to an African dance class. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. And I had so much fun.
Yes. Well, I've taken a few African dance classes in my life and they're so much fun.
It's so much fun. So again, this like defining moment for me. So I'm like having a blast in this African dance class. And anyway, so the hip hop teacher, street jazz teacher, she saw me at that intensive. We had an opportunity to like present work that we had choreographed ourselves.
Oh, cool.
And like me as this bold 15-year-old, now looking back, I'm like, who did I think I was? You know?
Exactly.
But I had done my hip hop solo, and she saw me and she was like, I'm going to take that as your audition. So again, I'm like accidentally auditioning for somebody.
Wow.
And she's like, I'm going to take that as your audition. and I want you to join my company. It's called Heartbridge. And it's a ministry, and we're a project-based company. We have rehearsals throughout the week. We have performances on the weekends at special events. We go on tour to a different nation in the summer. And I was like, oh, no, it's ministry. I've done that all my life. I'm done.
Yeah.
But she was like, why don't you just come have dinner and meet the team? And I was like, okay, fine, free food. I'll go meet everybody.
Right.
And I show up. My mom is with me. I show up to this dinner to meet her team, and she introduces me as one of her new members.
Oh, no.
I was like, what? And it was hilarious because my mom and I, after we left that night, I kind of felt a little bamboozled. And I was like, we both were just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And my mom was like, well, do you want to do it? And I was like, well, I guess I'm already in. So, okay. And one of the biggest catches of joining this ministry was you had to train in technique. You couldn't just be a such and such dancer. You had to train in technique. So I had to sign up for ballet classes, which I was like devastated about. And my mom was like, I'm not going to place you in any studios that aren't Christian. So we found this little Christian dance studio close to our house. And literally my first ballet class ever, I think we bought my leotard and tights like the same day.
Yeah.
And my mom was literally sewing the elastics on my shoe. And I go into ballet class and I'm like, what in the world am I doing here? The teacher is demoing the routine at the bar, and I'm like following along perfectly. And this is how unfamiliar I was with dance, right? Technique dance, like ballet.
Yeah.
I'm like following along with her, and I'm like, I'm doing this pretty well. Like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then she's like, okay, now with the music. And I was like, what? Wait, what?
No.
So that's actually how my technique journey began.
Cool. That's so funny.
And she was an amazing, amazing ballet dancer from New York City who had come open the studio. And she really was someone who spurred me along. Like, I was with her for 2 years. And during that time, at one point I was like, I'm done with ballet. I can't do this. I'm horrible at it. Therefore, I cannot be part of this. And she was like, she was so smart. She was was like, Tammy, how about this? You can stay in class for the bar portion, because that was the portion I felt the most comfortable with, was being at the bar. She was like, okay, stay in class for the bar. And then during across the floor and center floor, you can go out and stretch. And then you can come back later for your second class for jazz. And I was like, okay, sweet. I'm like gonna kind of almost get out of ballet.
Yeah.
Well, she's so brilliant. A couple of weeks later, she pulls me aside again and she goes, Tammy, I just want to let you know your technique is starting to slip. And I can see that you're actually growing so much when you're doing the full ballet class. So I really think that we need to bring you back for the full ballet class.
Yeah, that's awesome.
At the time, I was just
so
like,
smart.
Okay. And now years later, I'm like, oh, she is so smart.
Kind of let you almost come to it on your own a little bit. Like,
yeah. So that's how my technique journey began. And all through that technique, like training, it was all because I was part of this ministry called Heartbridge. Yeah. And so Heartbridge was where I did my first out of country outreach, which was in Spain. I was 16, I think 16 or 17. I think I was 16 when I went to Spain with Heartbridge.
Oh, cool.
And it was awesome. It was amazing for me to be able to travel and tour that way as a professional dance performing arts company.
Yeah.
But we did like workshops for television. We did workshops at studios. We did performances all over the place, including like huge theaters and then all the way down to street corners. It was just like, and so it was so eye-opening to me. And God really marked me in that time because I was I was realizing my passion for dance that I didn't know was there to that degree. And also just my passion too for how I felt connected to the Lord through dance. Like I didn't know how connected to the Lord I could feel through dance until that time. It was like, wow, I actually encounter God through dance.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And that really marked me those years. And so, yeah, I was with Heartbridge those years out of my hometown. And then Heartbridge got a phone call to relocate to YWAM Kona.
Okay.
And because the director had been part of YWAM for many, many years prior to that. And she got a phone call to come back and relocate to YWAM Kona. And she invited her whole team to join her. And I prayed and I was like, all right, it totally makes sense. I feel like since I was 3 years old, I've been hearing about DTS, discipleship training schools with YWAM. So here I go.
Yeah, that's so cool. So that's where you got on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yep. Okay. So I'm curious with you starting kind of the technique side of training a little bit later, quote unquote, obviously everyone has their own journey, but in the dance world, it feels like everyone's like starting when they're 3 at that kind of stuff. Right. I started when I was 10, so I was a little bit later, but yeah, how was that journey as far as like, I know it's so competitive anyways. I feel like dance, especially in like the ballet world. So what was that like for you kind of starting in high school?
This is really funny. That technique class that I first took, I mean, I was probably one of the older kids in there because, where else could they put, a beginner person at a small studio like that? And I think the really amazing thing looking back at that was that the Lord actually really humbled me through that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, even the insecurity and the struggles that come with like the not knowing or not feeling qualified can actually be a huge blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, looking back, I'm kind of jumping ahead because looking back at that going, man, being in that place of insecurity and being humbled, I can relate so much more to even dancers I work with now who are just starting their journey. And I can relate to it and go, you know what? It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And also I approach my teaching very differently because it wasn't something that I started when I was 3. It's something that I started later. So even the way I approach teaching and breaking down movements, it just is a little different because of how I was trained. So it's like almost this encouragement to others, like never doubt your journey and how it's going to help equip others for their journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's always been this up and down battle, and so many funny stories are coming to my mind as I'm sharing. I mean, one funny story was when I relocated to YWAM Kona. I signed up for a degree program with performing arts. It was basically a 3-year program. It basically turned out to be about a 3-year program. And I was taking ballet, every week in that. And at one point in that degree program, I remember taking all of my dance shoes and I put them in a box and I was like, I'm going to like bury and burn this box. Like I was like, I'm going to like take a sledgehammer to it. Like this needs to die. Because the big battle in me was like, I was like, God, why am I not better than I should be? I should be so much better than I am right now. I was like, God, why didn't you start me off on this journey when I was 3? Like, why didn't I start taking technique classes earlier? Like, if you're so good, then why did you,
Right.
All the things. And I literally was like, I'm done because I'm not where I think I should be. I'm done. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure what made me like take the duct tape off that shoe box and put those shoes back on. other than this tenacity in me to push through and press forward.
Yes.
And so, I mean, and I think, just encouragement from others going, no, you actually have grown so much more than you realize.
Yeah.
And I think when we don't, it's funny, right? We live in our own skin all of our lives, but we don't really see ourselves from the outside.
Yeah. I think about that sometimes too. I'm like, that's so weird. Like, how do people experience me as a person?
Exactly. And so I think it's so key to get mentors in your life. Surround yourself with people who will champion you and encourage you, and not just like feed your ego. You don't need that. We don't need that. But like someone who will genuinely champion you and encourage you.
Yes.
And call out the gold in you. And so I really think it's because in that time I had people around me like that, in this community that I was in. I had those people calling the gold out of me and saying, no, Tammy, you actually have grown so much more than I think you realize.
Yeah.
And so that was, I think, what kind of caused me to put my shoes on and keep going.
Keep going. Yes.
And then to really flash forward from all of that, because that's when I was like 19, 20 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and got, more technique training, even more beyond my degree program in New York City. And then of course, with the Damn Dance Company, you go hard,
It's intense. We're like ballet, modern technique or rehearsal, like multiple hours a day. Yeah. It was intense.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. And even though through all those years, I was growing, it actually, I think the biggest breakthrough moment for me, I think was in 2017 after having my daughter. And literally she's like this little baby that I'm like holding. And I remember having this revelation. And I think I was holding her. She was crying. She was a little bit of a colicky baby, which means she just cried a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember holding her one of the times that she was crying and me being like, I have no idea why you're crying, so I'm just going to hold you. And I remember this revelation of going, man, I love this baby. This baby is crying. This baby's a hot mess. This baby is all over the place. It's helpless.
Yeah.
But I love this baby. And it was almost this revelation of like, man, no matter how horrible I am at something, no matter how unqualified I feel, no matter how high my batma goes or how many spins I can do, like I am loved. And like, there's nothing that I can do that could qualify me for that love. And I think in that moment too, when I started, like after I recovered from pregnancy and baby, and I started dancing again, my whole approach to dance changed. And I was like, you know what? I actually don't really care if I'm a hot mess out here. I'm just gonna do this, This is what I'm called to do. I'm made to do. I've been doing this all my life. And it's okay if I'm a hot mess and get it wrong sometimes. I'm giving my best. That's
so true. So beautiful. Like, yeah, it's just like very clarifying to think of God's love in that way,
Yeah. As an artist, it is so hard not to wrap up your identity in your art and not to wrap up your identity in your craft, and to really know, like, no matter what, I am who I am because God said I am who I am. And I am loved, and I will give my absolute best. And that's all I can do.
Right.
And therefore I'm qualified for what I'm supposed to be doing in this world.
Yeah.
And even if that's like, and being okay with whatever that looks like, I think I got to this point where I'm like, oh, I don't have to be this like rock star with 10 million followers to be qualified.
Yeah.
Like my qualification could be making a difference in 10 people's life. And how epic is that, like to really, truly make a difference, So just kind of perspective of like what it is that we're called to influence and encourage,
Yeah, which is like kind of a perfect segue actually, because I love your passion for working with other dancers now and just people with Pilates, right? But working with others and helping equip them, right? And especially the dancers at YWAM, like equipping them in their gifts. And then also, I know you worded it like releasing them, right, into their calling.
Wow.
So where did that passion kind of spur from, I guess, or begin?
Goodness, where did that come from?
I'm sure it's probably evolved over time or like come over time.
Yeah, I often say this. One of my favorite things to teach on is co-creating with God as an artist. And in that teaching, I often talk about like different disciples or even just different people in the Bible who are called by the Lord and like their moment that they had their call, and for some of them, it's like super clear, like they were called by name or they had this epic encounter.
Yeah, like Paul,
Yeah, Paul, exactly. He has this like epic encounter and it's like, ta-da!
Exactly.
And then I often share this like in my own story. Again, it was like every part of my life, it was just a matter of taking like the next step forward. It was like, just take the next step forward. 3 years old, my family joined this ministry. Boop, there's my step. And then like the Heart Bridge company, like, boop, there's my next step. DTS, there's my next step. A Damn Dance company, the AD2, there's my next step. And it was just like every step, it was just like, all right, this is next. This is next. And I think for me too, I realized, oh my gosh, this has been threaded through my whole life. And I remember having this moment, actually, I think it was around 2016 even, where I was like, if I actually look back at my life, I've really been equipped to equip other dancers.
Yeah.
And it's so funny when you're like in your life, you're in your own skin and you're just doing your thing. And then you realize, wow, I've actually really been set up this whole time.
Yep.
This was just a huge setup. And so I had this invitation to by the Dean of the College of Arts. So for those who maybe don't know, YWAM, Youth with a Mission, has a university called University of the Nations, and we have different colleges. And the Dean of the College of the Arts invited me to help, especially with dance. And I was like, let me pray about this. And I got a really clear yes. And I came back and he said yes. And, a part of my yes was because I looked back at my life and I was like, okay, what confirmations from my own life are there to say yes to this? Yeah. And that's when I was like, wait a second, I've been dancing all my life.
I love that.
Looking at my journey, I was just like, oh my goodness, this has been sown in my life. And I think for me, even having that moment of going, aha, and also looking back too at different people who called it out of me, like even like Randall Flynn, Cheryl Cutlip, Maria Jackson, who I worked with in YWAM for many years, my dance teacher from when I was 15 years old, different parents when I was little in the King's Kids ministry. Looking back, going, man, these people called this out in me and how important that was to me and wanting to offer that to others, like wanting to offer that, like calling forth and believing in others, like sometimes you just need that extra oomph from that outside voice.
So true.
So yeah, I actually get so excited about sitting with someone and kind of hearing like bits and pieces of their dreams and going, I don't know how this all fits together. And I'm like, oh, I can see it. I can see, like, what if we do this and this and this and this? And it's just helping people put those pieces together. That is something that excites me so much, like seeing how all the pieces fit in the story. And so I think that's something in me too, that like God placed there. If you've ever done any of those like personality tests, I'm like this, like in the Myers-Briggs, I'm like the architect. So I love seeing how things are like built and put together.
That's cool. That works perfectly.
Yeah. So even in our program, so I run a school of dance with YWAM, and one of the elements of the school of dance, we call it ministry development, where we have people who I mean, in these programs, I mean, we've had someone who literally has been like, since 10 years old, I knew I was going to start such and such ministry. And like, I know my values, I know my mission statement, I know my advisors, you know, we've had people from that all the way to people who like day one, we sit down and we're like, what is your ministry that you feel like you're called to as a dancer? And that person will break down in tears and they're like, I don't know if I'm called to anything with dance. And I don't know what I'm doing or what I'm thinking. Am I actually qualified? And I'm like, let me tell you what.
Right.
You know, like you are like, and so that actually for me is one of the most fun parts about that school is like hearing people's dreams, hearing people like things that God has put on their heart and just figuring out how all the pieces come together. And I think it's so exciting to see those things like burst out of them. And also speaking to, I just feel like it's so important to share too, especially amongst us artists, even throughout my own training, battling with comparing myself to others.
Yeah.
I had this moment one time and I can't remember exactly when it was. I do know it was after I was married. So it had to be after, 2009, sometime after 2009. I remember having this moment where I was like, man, our God is so big and so creative. He's so unlimited that we could actually never have enough dance companies, dance studios, dance events, dance productions. Like we actually could never match him.
Yeah. That's really humbling and encouraging.
Yeah. And so I was like, so even if I started, I don't know, like a dance company that specifically focused on, I don't know, locking.
Yeah.
And someone next door to me starts the same exact type of dance company, the expression would still be so unique from each other because God is so big and he has designed us each so uniquely that we actually need both and more. That's
a really good point.
It's like we could never have too much. And so therefore, there is no space for comparison. Like there's actually no such thing because God is so big, his creativity is so unlimited, and we're each so uniquely designed. The expression that comes out of each of us is going to be so unique that there is no such thing as comparison because it's so unique and God is so big.
Yes, that is so powerful and like game changer when it comes to our mindset, I think.
Yeah. And just so to see someone like kind of latch on to like their unique expression and release that I'm like, yes, let's do this, you know, this is what we do, you know, like.
Yeah. So good. So with leading at YWAM and kind of working in the School of the Arts or School of Dance, have there been any like struggles as a leader kind of walking through especially these last few years? I think it's been harder for everyone with COVID and everything, but just if you wanted to speak to any of those kind of tough moments, but also how you've come through them maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for anyone who's starting something can attest to trying to communicate your heart, your vision from the Lord. Like it's tricky getting it out and like sharing it well. Yeah. So I think that's a really big challenge. And I find for me, one of the biggest things that helps with that is like writing the vision down, writing things down, and then going from that place to share with others. That has been a huge help. But even so, it's like getting the engine going, you know, and getting it like, just like trying to get that engine going. So because my husband and I, we had traveled all over the place back and forth, and then we finally came back to YWAM Kona in 2015, and I started, I rejoined Heartbridge. And then out of that time, I actually felt that's when I shifted into really focusing on dance programs.
Yeah.
And helping dance programs for the university. And so getting that like relaunched in this base in YWAM, because at that time, there was actually going to not be any dance programs registered with the university.
Oh,
so it was like this relaunching. So like
Yeah.
getting that engine going was so tough. And so we got that engine going slowly, and we started offering more and more dance programs. And then 2020 hit.
Yeah.
And we were at this really cool moment where, I mean, within our variety of programs that we were offering here, we probably had something like 20 to 30 dancers, and we would have other dancers dropping in on open dance classes. And it was just this like, we felt this like stirring of dance community, and like, you know, it was just this really rich time. And then COVID hit, and everybody had to go home.
Yeah.
And everything got shut down. And then something really wild that happened on our campus was the building that housed our main dance studio was an older building, and it actually had to get torn down because it was an older building. And so in the midst of like COVID shutting down programs, sending students home, our main studio is getting torn down. And in the midst of this, my husband and I were trying to get pregnant, and I had gotten pregnant and I had a miscarriage. And I was about 11 to 12 weeks along. And, you know, any miscarriage that anyone would experience is horrible.
Yeah.
And so it was especially a traumatic moment for me. I ended up actually having to be rushed to the hospital. And in the middle of all this, I'm like, man, everything is just getting ripped off of me in a way of like these dreams for dance ministry and these programs and the studio and then a growing family. And I really had a battle with the Lord going, is this my calling? Which is crazy because, right, I've been at this point, you know, I've been doing it since I was 3 years old. So why would I doubt? But at the same time, I think it's almost like we have to keep revisiting that question for ourselves. Am I really called to this? And I think too, in that moment, I was so shaken. And one of the amazing things that I felt like came out of it though, was that there was this revelation of the goodness of God that I had that I can't compare to any other moment in my life.
Wow.
Even during the miscarriage, I was actually listening to the song, The Blessing. And may his favor be upon you and your children and their children. And I just started taking a hold of that promise going, no, like my story is not done. This journey is not done. This is not the end. Like I just started like proclaiming truths over my own life and hope over my own life. And it's kind of crazy, but just kind of holding on, like almost like this like death grip, this tenacity of like holding on to the bare minimum of, okay, God is good. And if nothing else, that's enough. And I really think the Lord needed to take me to that place of, if nothing else, do you know that I'm good?
That's,
If nothing else, do you know that I'm good? And I came out of that moment going, man, there is this deep revelation of God's goodness. Like no matter what happens, God is good. And what's wild too in this journey, in the midst of all that, the Lord started speaking to me about opening a dance studio in my community, like in the town of Kona.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, no, God, like absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Like COVID and like my life is turned upside down. Like this makes no sense. But there was just favor and momentum all over it, to the point where if I said no, it was kind of like I might as well be Jonah and you might as well just throw me overboard.
Yeah.
You know, like, because it was just so clear that I needed to step out in that. So, you know, in the midst of that, then I find myself opening a dance studio, and I find myself like, there's this like increase in dance ministry in Youth with a Mission. And then like, there's been so many meetings that I've been in the last year where it's so clear that God is moving powerfully in dance. That even the last program that I ran, which was actually we actually got to run another dance program in 2021. Woohoo! So things are starting to stir back up. But I was telling those students, I was like, guys, God is stirring the waters. Something is like boiling and bubbling out of dance ministry and missions. And when I think about dance missions, I'm not just limiting it to like the traditional sense of dance missions. It's all and everything with dance, you know, whether you're a professional in the industry, in a company, running a studio, you are a dance missionary, you know? And so there is something that is being exponentially expedited in this time. And like, it's like for such time as this, like, guys, we just have to like run with the vision, you know, like let everything else get pulled off of you and just hold on to the goodness of God, because it's time to just run with the vision that he's given you.
So cool. I love that. So I'm curious, as far as like mission,
yes.
What has it been like being on mission as a family? So, because you met Andreas through YWAM, right?
Yes. I met Andreas in 2007. I was staffing one of the programs that he came to take.
Nice.
And then after he took that program, he made this like 2-year commitment to the campus to serve here. And someone started matchmaking.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's really fun. And so, we got married in 2009. So it's crazy to think that was so long ago. Fun fact, our son that we just had this year was actually born on our anniversary.
Really? Aww.
Yeah, so that was really special, you know, and I really actually felt like it was marking a new season of life, you know, for us. Because of all the craziness that we've had in the last couple of years, it was like this promise of like new life for our marriage, new life for ministry, new life for our calling. So that was really fun. And I mean, I think being on mission as a family is something so special. It's super challenging. You know, I work with I'm a full-time volunteer missionary with Youth with a Mission.
Yeah.
You know, I have a side business too, that I get a little bit of support through. It's just different. So like trusting the Lord with your finances and provision is something that's so crazy. But even a really cool story about that, the place that we live in, the condo that we live in, the Lord like totally provided that for us while I was pregnant with our daughter.
Really?
And so we moved in like 2 or 3 months before she was born.
Wow.
And I just remember thinking like, man, God, you really do care about family. That you would actually provide a place for us to live that we could call our own home. And then here comes our daughter. So like God really does provide when you're working in mission with family. And it's been really fun to even see like her calling come to life. You know, she's only 5 years old. And even like a couple of years ago when she was like 2, almost 3, she came along with me to teach while I was teaching a dance class. But there were kids who were close to her age in that dance class. And the setting that we were in, she was able to just like join in the dance class with us.
Yeah.
And like partway through the dance class, I was like, oh my goodness, this is Kezia's first dance class. Aww. This is so fun.
Aww.
I think too, what's so exciting to see like her calling come to life and for them to grow up on a YWAM campus where you have like so many nations represented and so much culture represented. It's just a really rich environment to have family. It's so special. Like you really, even amongst the community, there's this family feel. So like everybody has like, we have a lot of kids in this community. So you just kind of help each other out, you know, and you just take your kids along with you to whether it's like a worship time or a prayer gathering or, you know, or even like in our rehearsal for dance last week, we had like 3 moms in the rehearsal.
Aww.
And like at the end of the rehearsal, all the dads showed up with all the babies.
That's so sweet.
And so I think one of the major things for me too was realizing like my calling doesn't end because I become a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like who I am doesn't like, it's not done just because I become a mom. Like it just becoming mom, like is just part of the journey.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I thought that was a really cool revelation to have of like, wow, my calling doesn't end. Who I am doesn't end. I actually keep going and I get to be an example to my children for their calling. Because I want them to be able to say yes to their calling.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. So fun. And I can totally picture it too. Like all the kids around and just being kind of like little cousins to each other in a way with
absolutely.
So fun. So speaking of dance and mission, Project Dance Hawaii. So I'd love to hear more about it and kind of what, I mean, I don't know about most. We have talked about Project Dance on the podcast before. We've had Cheryl on. And so if people have listened to that, they have kind of an understanding. But if they haven't, do you want to give just kind of like a brief overview of Project Dance? And then specifically what it's going to look like this summer?
Yeah. So Cheryl Cutlip, who's awesome.
Yeah, we love you, Cheryl.
Yes. Amazing woman, amazing artist. She started Project Dance. She has so many cool stories about Project Dance and just how it has started and even her journey throughout it. It's so cool to hear her share about it. We've gotten to have her come teach in School of Dance and share her stories, which it's like getting the behind the scenes peek. It's so fun to hear her stories.
Yeah.
All that to say, she was a rockette in New York City, professional in the industry. And she was living in New York City when 9/11 happened. And it was such a tragedy for the city, of course. And she thought, what can I do? What can I do as a dancer? And she thought, well, I can dance. That's what I can do. And so she started Project Dance to bring hope and healing to the city.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just multiplied. People like kind of caught her heart and vision for it and took it all over the world. So there's been different people who've produced Project Dance in different locations all over the world. So Project Dance has now been around for 20 years and has had over 100 events all over the world.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I've gotten to attend several of those events in different locations. I've actually been, of course, to New York City, and then also Houston, and also San Francisco, and also London.
Cool.
And so those are the locations I've gotten to attend. And it's so fun. Just a side note, it's so fun because when you arrive at a Project Dance, it's like a family reunion.
It is. That's true.
It's like this little miniature family reunion that you get to have. And it's so much fun. So, but I would say like Project Dance is a 3-day event. And some of the key components of it are you have networking, you have master dance class, you have this Project Dance Live, which is kind of like highlights different artists from that particular city and what they're doing. There's usually a worship night too connected to that. That's always really fun. And then there's an open air concert for the city. So that's kind of like within the context of the 3-day event. And it's such a rich event and it's such a unique event. And again, it's like a family reunion. And so it's so fun. And I was also just thinking about this the other day. There's like no comparison, no competition. It's just this fun family time where you train hard, you perform and cheer one another along. It's just a really fun event. Like it's just like no other. And so, you know, no matter your background, no matter your style of dance, it's just an epic event to be a part of.
For sure.
And so when Cheryl was here actually last year in 2021, teaching in School of Dance, I was taking her around our community and sharing about different dancers here and just like reflecting on Project Dance and the richness of Project Dance. And I said to Cheryl, I was like, what if we finally have Project Dance Hawaii? And she was like, yeah.
Love it.
Okay. And I was like, Cheryl, what if we have like a leaders retreat? I was like, is this crazy? I was like, let's have a leaders retreat. Like this is the anniversary event. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this like 3-day Project Dance event, the event that we all know and love, followed by a 5-day leaders retreat. where we are going to have some times where you just, free open time where you just go and enjoy Hawaii, but also these really rich times to come together as leaders and gather together going, what's happening in your region? What do we feel is next in dance? And what do we feel like God wants to do in dance ministry for the next 20 years to come? Like, let's celebrate. Let's have this amazing birthday bash to celebrate the last 20 years. So if you have ever been at a Project Dance, like this is like, hear ye. If you've ever been at Project Dance, this is a birthday bash. You know, like you need to be here to celebrate, but also celebrating what God has done in the past, celebrating Project Dance from before, but also looking ahead going, what is the next 20 years? What's the next 20 years for Project Dance? What's the next 20 years for just ministry and dance, missions and dance, and just dance? Like what's next? And how do we position and posture ourselves for it? And how do we encourage one another? And so Cheryl and I are just so excited about this moment to gather with other leaders and go, okay, we can keep doing this, especially after everything we've all experienced from 2020 and the craziness of COVID, and just kind of feeling in some ways a little empty, but knowing the work isn't done, and knowing our dreams are not done, our movement's not done, our creativity is not done.
Right.
And so we're calling it refuel because we just feel like it's time to get refueled for everything that's to come.
Ooh, it's going to be so good. That's awesome. So
good.
Definitely everyone check it out. So is there a website people can go to check out information?
Definitely. There's www.projectdance.com. And then of course in the drop-down menu it has the events of the year and you'll see Hawaii. You can just click on that. And then if you go to that page, there's even this like register now. And if you click on register now, it takes you into another page that has even more information.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And then I know there's a Facebook event as well, right? So people can find.
Yes, there's the Facebook event and the Project Dance Instagram, Project Dance Hawaii Instagram.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be so incredible. And what better place to do it for sure.
Yeah. And also, I didn't even say this, but one of the really cool things is YWAM Kona is actually going to co-host the Leaders Retreat.
Cool.
So it's going to be so rich too, for that reason too. Yeah. Just this, and YWAM pretty much like everywhere Project Dance has gone, there's been YWAMers around because it's like, we're everywhere. We're all over the world.
Yes. That'll be so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this really, also this really fun moment of just like gathering together and as a family. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because YWAM Kona is helping co-host, they are actually making campus meals and campus housing. If you're coming to the full event, they're actually making that available to participants.
Oh, wow.
For a very, very, very cheap price. Like you cannot stay in Hawaii with meals this cheap ever.
Wow. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing more details because I think it's just really good for people to hear what's this all about and everything. So I hope we get lots of friends joining. That'll be so good. So as we sort of wrap up, is there anything specifically on your heart right now that you want to share with other artists who might be listening to this?
Yeah. I got this phrase when I was like thinking about that question. I got this phrase and it's so simple, but it's the richness of the Lord. Such a simple phrase. And I think even kind of what I shared already of like the creativity of the Lord is so unlimited that for us as creatives, if you're feeling stuck, there's still more to pull down. There's still more to create from. Even with finances too, a Project Dance story, Project Dance testimony.
Yeah.
Living out here in the middle of the Pacific, this little island in the middle of the ocean. We're one of the most secluded islands that's heavily inhabited,
Wow,
so it kind of feels a little isolated out here. There was one year that Project Dance in New York City, all the way across the ocean, all the way across the continent was happening. And I was like, man, I really, really want to go this year. This was a year I was planning to go, but I just can't because of finances. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. And then Cheryl shared a story about Project Dance and on Facebook actually, and I saw it, and something in me, that tenacity, I'm telling you, that tenacity, it rose up in me. And I was like, oh, I have to be there for Project Dance New York City this year. I don't know what it was in me, but I knew I had to go. And so there was this like determination that it was going to work. Aww. And so long story short, within a couple of days, someone gave me over $1,000 for me to buy my ticket, everything provided for. Like, I actually ended up finding a place with my friend to stay for free. Like the meals came in, like money for meals was there, like everything within days. And so I think also the richness of the Lord, like in creativity, but also like the richness of the Lord in finances, like never limit what you can do as an artist because of, oh, there's just not finances for it. Or, I'm feeling this creative block. Like there's just so much more to pull down.
Such a good word and phrase for us to keep like at the forefront right now, you know?
Yeah.
So, and just for fun, what is one of your favorite things right now?
Oh man, you know what? This is going to be really funny. Okay, so I love movies. I love film. I'm not by any means, I'm not some film guru at all. Like people say celebrity names and I have no idea who you're talking about, but I love watching movies. And I'm one of those people who I can watch a movie, like the same movie over and over again.
Oh yeah, me too.
So right now, one of the things I've been doing is I actually have been watching the entire Marvel series.
Yes.
And so I even Google search, like, how do you watch the entire series? And so oftentimes, this is such a mom thing. I'll put it on as I'm going to bed and I end up falling asleep.
Oh,
so
yeah.
As I watch the movie, I usually like watch one movie over the entire week.
Yes.
I've been having so much fun watching the Marvel movies. And even like allowing the Lord to speak to me through the movies. I know that sounds really silly.
No, that's so cool though.
But even to allow the Lord to speak to me. So even I was watching one of the Marvel movies and like, it was like one where like Captain America, of course, was in this like battle and like he was overcoming finally. And like people were showing up, the whole team was showing up and there was like overcoming. And I was like, yes, we can do this. Like we can keep going.
Love that.
So funny. But yes, that's something I've been doing for fun.
Marvel movies are so fun. Yes. I definitely have. I think I've seen pretty much all of them at this point. But it'd be really fun to just watch them like pretty back to back, you know?
It is. It's so fun. And then you're like, oh, that's why they did that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So many great like little things. Yeah.
I've always been that kid who like, I would see like a superhero movie and like afterwards, after the movie, I kind of feel like a superhero.
Yes. Yeah, you just like embody that a little bit.
Yes. And I just realized as I'm saying this to you, Rachel, that Randall would be so proud.
Yes, he really would. Yes. We love you as well, Randy. And we are thinking of you and your love of superheroes.
Yeah.
Especially Batman, for sure.
Yes.
So good. Actually, were you there when we all went to see a movie together? I'm trying to remember. Was that?
I try to remember which one
Hobbit?
It was. Dude, I think it was.
I think so. We got a picture in front of the sign. That's why I'm like
visualizing
it. So it wasn't Marvel, but still it was Lord of the Rings related, which is also very cool. So
yes, exactly. Yes, I think I was there. Yeah.
That's that so was fun. Oh, so many good memories. We didn't even get into that. We'll just have to have you on again another time.
Part 2.
Part 2. Well, this has been speaking of richness, this has been so rich and just so amazing. And I've really appreciated you just sharing your heart and your journey and how, God has really just shown himself good through your story. And then I think it's like really faith building, like I said earlier, for each of us who are listening, So
I don't know if you want to throw this in there, but I was just thinking now, like, I wanted to say to you that, like, coming back from COVID, coming back from loss, like we've been able to run a school of dance here in Kona, but we've also seen school of dance launch in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And then there's dance programs all over the world now with YWAM. So like we went from like almost nothing happening in 2016 to like growth. So like there's growth.
Yeah.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. So whenever there's loss, it's like the light is coming.
Yes. So good. I think that's a perfect way to wrap up today. Yeah. So I'm curious, we talked about Project Dance, so projectdance.com. Is there a good way for people to reach out to you if they're interested in connecting or learning more about YWAM and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's also our YWAM Kona Dance Instagram.
Okay, cool.
I'm on that. So actually, if people message there, they'll actually get me.
Nice.
But also I'm happy to give out the email address too for YWAM Kona Dance. It's dance@uofnkona.edu. dance@uofnkona.edu. And so if people are interested in Dance with YWAM, they could also message me there.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And yeah, just thanks for being you. It's been so fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
Wow, you guys, I don't know about you, but this conversation with Tammy really just filled me up with a sense of hope, with a sense of faith, and just really encouraged me in this season of transition. And I hope it was super encouraging for you as well. I want to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters for the podcast. Thank you for continuing to support the show. If you are interested in helping support as well and getting some extra bonus content, you can learn more at creativeimpactpodcast.com/Patreon. That's creativeimpactpodcast.com/Patreon. Another way that you can help to support the show is just by going to whatever app you happen to be in right now, listening, and you can leave a rating and also a review if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple of minutes or even seconds to do that. It means the world, and it helps other people find the show as well. You can find all the links, the full show notes, and additional resources on our website, creativeimpactpodcast.com. I wanted to leave you with just something that I've been really processing lately, and that is the idea of staying connected to the vine. In John chapter 15, Jesus talks about being the true vine, and he encourages us to abide in him or stay connected to him because the branch can't bear fruit by itself unless it's connected to the vine. And something that really has stood out to me lately is the idea of, sometimes we try so hard to bear fruit or to, have productive ministries or jobs and just like produce. But that really isn't where our focus should lie. It should lie in staying connected to the vine. And so that's just a little word of encouragement today, that the goal is not to just bear fruit. The goal is to stay connected, and naturally out of staying connected to the vine, that will allow you to bear fruit. So I hope that speaks to you today. I know it's really been speaking to my heart lately. And thank you again so much for listening to the Creative Impact Podcast. The music for the show is produced by Michael Cash. Until next time, remember that you are designed to create, made to inspire. Continue living with purpose and making an impact. See you next time, friends.